The endless white stretched before her like a cruel, unforgiving blanket. Kriala's body trembled, not just from the bone-chilling cold, but from the deep sense of betrayal that consumed her. Her spacecraft lay in broken pieces around her, scattered, like forgotten dreams across the frozen desert landscape. Her species, the Syrian, had a ruthless survival code. Injured members were considered weak, a potential drain on collective resources. When her ship sustained critical damage during a routine exploration mission, her crew had made their decision quickly and without mercy. They ejected her survival pod, broadcasting a cold official transmission. Individual compromised. Mission protocol activated. The survival pod's emergency systems had failed halfway through the descent. Now, only she remained, a lone figure against an endless white horizon. Her translucent skin, normally iridescent and vibrant, had turned a pale, sickly gray. Frost formed delicate patterns across her biological membrane, each crystalline formation a testament to her rapidly declining life force. Beside her, another pod flickered with a faint light. Her offspring, the one thing that mattered more than her own survival. The pod's protective systems were failing, its energy signals growing weaker with each passing hour. She knew that soon, even the sophisticated technology would surrender to the planet's brutal environment. Kriala's sensory organs detected the temperature, -60°C. Her biological systems were shutting down. Each breath became a struggle, each movement an immense challenge. She had been trained for harsh environments, but this was beyond any training, beyond any survival scenario she had ever encountered. The irony was not lost on her. Her species prided themselves on advanced technological capabilities, on their ability to navigate the most challenging cosmic landscapes. Yet here she was, abandoned and forgotten, her life reduced to a simple mathematical probability of survival. Her thoughts drifted to her homeworld, a complex network of interconnected floating cities. Would anyone remember her? Would her offspring's potential be mourned? In Syrian culture, individual lives were secondary to collective progress. Emotional attachments were considered primitive, inefficient. As her consciousness began to fade, Kriala made one final attempt to activate her communication systems. A desperate, almost inaudible signal pulsed out into the vast, empty whiteness. It carried her coordinates, her species identification code, and a simple primal message: help. The signal traveled through the cold, indifferent space, a tiny beacon of hope in a universe that seemed to have forgotten her. Her body continued to fight, her biological systems performing last-minute emergency protocols. Specialized cells worked to generate internal heat, to protect her most critical functions. Hours passed. The planet's 2 moons rose and set, casting long, blue-white shadows across the frozen landscape. Kriala's movements became less frequent. Her breath, once steady and strong, now came in shallow, irregular patterns. The survival pod containing her offspring continued to emit a soft, pulsing light. Its energy reserves were critically low. If no rescue came soon, both mother and child would become nothing more than another tragic statistic in the vast, unforgiving record of space exploration. In her semi-conscious state, Kriala remembered the training, the countless simulations, the rigid education that had shaped her entire existence. Survival was everything. Individual sacrifice was expected. Emotional connections were irrelevant. But something deep within her, something beyond, her species' rigid programming refused to surrender. A spark of something more fundamental, a mother's instinct, a primal drive to protect her offspring, kept her consciousness flickering. The frozen desert remained silent. No rescue ships appeared on the horizon. No sounds disturbed the endless, white landscape. Just the slow, inevitable progression of a life slowly fading against the cold, unforgiving backdrop of an unknown planet. As darkness began to consume her, Kriala made one last conscious effort. Her hand, weak and trembling, reached toward the survival pod. A single touch, a final connection to the life she carried, the future she hoped to preserve. Then, Silence. The white landscape continued, unchanged and indifferent, waiting. The horizon. Pathfinder drifted through the quiet expanse of space, its research team tired and somewhat bored. Dr. J. Park sat at the main sensor station, his fingers moving almost mechanically across the control panels. Another routine exploration mission seemed destined to end without any significant discoveries. Suddenly, a strange signal flickered across his screen. Most crew members would have dismissed it as space interference or a random energy pulse. But Jay was different. Something about this signal felt unusual, complex yet fragile. "Captain Kim," he called out, his voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "We've got something strange on the long-range sensors." Captain Hee-Won Kim approached, her experienced eyes scanning the data. Most veteran space explorers would have ignored such a weak signal, but something in Jay's demeanor made her pause. The ship's communications specialist, Yoon-ji Choi, began running advanced diagnostic protocols. The signal was weak, almost broken, but it carried a unique biological signature unlike anything they had encountered before. "It's not random," Jay explained. "There's a pattern, a deliberate transmission." The crew knew Jay's reputation. He had a history of discovering extraordinary things that others missed. During his previous missions, he had identified 2 new planetary systems and discovered a unique form of plasma-based life in the Orion cluster. Sung-Min Lee, the medical officer, began analyzing the biological components of the signal, his screen, filled with complex data streams, showing traces of an organic structure that didn't match any known species in their extensive database. "The signal is coming from a planet in the Epsilon Quadrant," Yoon-ji reported. "Temperature readings are extreme, -60 degrees Celsius. No known biological system could survive there. Most crews would have continued their planned route. Standard protocols suggested avoiding unknown and extreme environments. But this crew was different. They were explorers, driven by curiosity and a deep desire to understand the unknown." Captain Kim looked at Jay. She knew his track record. If he believed something was worth investigating, it usually was. "Change course," she said simply. "Full protective protocol." The ship's advanced navigation systems began plotting a complex route. Protective shields were activated, specialized scanning equipment prepared. Every system was calibrated for potential extreme conditions. Jay's eyes remained fixed on the weak signal. Something about its rhythm, its subtle variations, suggested intelligence. Not just a random transmission, but a deliberate cry for help. Hours passed. The crew prepared specialized environmental suits, reviewed potential rescue protocols, and ran countless simulations. Each team member understood the risks. Space exploration was never safe, but it was always important. As they approached the planet, the signal became clearer. Fragments of a complex communication system emerged, broken pieces of a story that hinted at something extraordinary. "We're detecting a survival pod," Sung-Min announced. "Biological life signs are extremely weak but present." The tension in the ship was palpable. Years of training, months of preparation, all focused on this potential moment of discovery. Would they find another intelligent species? A potential scientific breakthrough? Jay felt something more. Beyond the scientific curiosity, there was a deeper feeling, something that spoke of rescue, of potential survival against impossible odds. The planet's surface came into view, an endless white landscape broken only by occasional rocky formations, harsh, unforgiving, a place where life seemed impossible. "Preparing landing sequence," Captain Kim announced. "All systems ready." As the Horizon Pathfinder began its descent, no one knew exactly what they would find. A potential scientific discovery? A rescue mission? Or something entirely unexpected? The white landscape waited, holding its secrets close. The landing was smooth, almost silent. Specialized thrusters kicked up minimal snow, preserving the delicate environmental conditions. Dr. J. Park's protective suit hummed with advanced temperature regulation systems, creating a bubble of survivable warmth. Around his body, outside the world was pure white. Not a soft, gentle white, but a hard, sharp whiteness that seemed to cut through vision itself. Temperatures registered at -62 degrees Celsius, an environment that would kill most biological systems within minutes. Sungmin Lee's scanning equipment began mapping the crash site. Fragments of an unknown spacecraft were scattered across the frozen landscape, each piece telling a complex story of violent destruction. Metallic components mixed with organic materials suggested a vessel unlike any human technology. Signal. Source is approximately 500 meters northeast. Yoonji's voice crackled through the communication system. Structural integrity of the area is unstable. Radiation levels are unusual. Jay moved forward, each step carefully calculated. His suit's sensors were working overtime, collecting data with every movement. Something about this site felt different, not just another scientific expedition, but something more profound. The first glimpse of the survival pod came suddenly. Half buried in snow, its surface was a mix of damaged technology and something that looked almost biological. It wasn't just a machine. It was alive in some strange way. As Jay approached, he saw her. Kriala's body was barely recognizable as a living being. Her translucent skin had turned a pale gray, frost forming intricate patterns across her biological membrane. Next to her, another smaller pod flickered with a dying energy signal. Life signs detected, Sungmin reported. But they're extremely weak. Biological structure is completely unknown to our database. Jay's hand reached out, his suit's protective systems analyzing every microscopic detail. The alien's body was a complex network of systems that defied human understanding. Her breathing was shallow, almost non-existent. Communication would be impossible through traditional methods, but something in Jay's approach suggested a deeper connection. His movements were slow, careful, not just a scientific approach, but something more compassionate. The smaller pod beside her caught his attention. An offspring, he realized. Both mother and child were on the edge of survival, abandoned in this frozen wasteland. "We're bringing them back," Jay announced. His tone allowed no argument. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a decision. Specialized medical containment units were prepared. Sungmin worked quickly, adapting human medical technologies to support this unknown biological system. Every movement was precise, every decision calculated to maximize survival potential. As they moved the survivors, strange energy pulses emerged from Kriala's body. Not just random signals, but something that suggested a complex communication system. Her species was trying to communicate even in this near-death state. The ship's medical bay became a complex laboratory. Advanced scanning equipment surrounded the two survivors. Machines worked to understand their biological structure, to create an environment that could support their survival. Jay watched carefully. He knew this was more than a scientific discovery. This was a moment of potential first contact. Every decision could change everything humans understood about life in the universe. Hours passed. Kriala's body began to stabilize. Slow, almost imperceptible changes suggested her biological systems were responding to human intervention. The smaller pod showed increasing energy signatures. "She's adapting," Sungmin said, surprise clear in his voice. "Her cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's like her entire body is a complex communication and adaptation system." As the Horizon Pathfinder moved away from the frozen planet, something extraordinary was happening inside its medical bay. A connection was forming between human technology and an alien biology, between a rescue team and a species they knew nothing about. The universe, it seemed, had just become a lot more interesting. The medical bay hummed with soft, controlled energy. Kriala lay connected to a complex network of medical devices that translated her alien biology into something humans could understand. Her translucent skin slowly regained its original iridescent quality, shifting colors with each passing hour. Sungmin Lee worked tirelessly. His expertise pushed beyond every known medical boundary. Each of Kriala's biological systems was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her cellular structure could regenerate faster than any human system, adapting to the medical interventions in ways that seemed almost miraculous. The smaller pod, her offspring, remained under constant monitoring. Tiny pulses of energy suggested life, but in a form completely foreign to human understanding. It wasn't just a living being. It was a complex network of biological and technological systems intertwined. J. Park spent hours studying the communication patterns. What initially seemed like random energy pulses were actually a sophisticated language. Her body communicated through color changes, subtle electromagnetic waves, and microscopic cellular movements. Days passed. Kriala's consciousness began to stabilize. Her first moments of awareness were not of fear, but of pure scientific curiosity. She observed the humans with an intensity that went beyond simple survival instinct. Yoonji Choi developed a specialized translation system. It wasn't just about converting words, but understanding the entire cultural and biological context of communication. Slowly, a bridge began to form between human and alien understanding. Her species doesn't view individual life the way humans do, Jay explained to the crew. They see themselves as part of a complex collective system. Individual survival is secondary to collective progress. The medical team discovered something extraordinary. Kriala's body was more than a biological entity. It was a living database. Memories, scientific knowledge, and entire cultural histories were encoded in her cellular structure. Her offspring showed similar complexity. The survival pod was not just a protective device, but an extension of the mother's biological system. Every piece of technology was alive, adaptive, constantly changing. Sungmin noticed something unique about their healing process. Human medical interventions were being rapidly transformed, adapted by Kriala's biological systems. It was as if her body was learning, evolving with each medical treatment. Cultural exchanges began to happen beyond language. Kriala showed glimpses of her homeworld, floating cities that defied traditional understanding of architecture and technology. Her memories were like living holographic projections, rich with detail and emotion. The crew realized they were experiencing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a medical rescue or a scientific discovery. It was a profound moment of interspecies understanding. Jay noticed how Kriala's perception of humans changed. Her initial view of them as potential threats transformed into something more complex. She began to understand compassion, a concept completely foreign in her original cultural context. The ship's medical bay became a laboratory of mutual discovery. Human technology met alien biology. Each intervention, each moment of contact revealed layers of complexity that challenged everything they knew about life and intelligence. Kriala's offspring began showing signs of increased activity. The pod's energy systems synchronized with the ship's medical equipment, creating a living network of technological and biological systems. "We're not just healing her," Sungmin observed one evening. "We're creating a new understanding of what life can be." Captain Kim watched the developments with a mixture of scientific excitement and philosophical wonder. This rescue mission had become something far more significant than a simple survival intervention. As days turned into weeks, the boundaries between human and alien began to blur. Communication became more fluid, understanding more profound. Kriala was no longer just a survivor, but a bridge between two completely different forms of intelligent life. The Horizon Pathfinder continued its journey through space, carrying within its medical bay a promise of something extraordinary, a new understanding of life, intelligence, and connection that would change everything humans thought they knew about the universe. The healing had begun, but it was more than physical. It was a healing of understanding, of perspective, of the very definition of what it means to be alive. The Horizon Pathfinder's communication systems buzzed with an unprecedented transmission. Kriala's body had become a living bridge between her species and humans, her biological systems now fully integrated with the ship's advanced technologies. Her offspring, once barely alive, now pulsed with extraordinary energy. The small being was no longer just a survival pod's inhabitant, but a complex living entity that seemed to communicate through subtle color changes and electromagnetic waves. J. Park worked tirelessly to prepare the transmission to Crayolla's home, civilization. The message was more than a simple communication. It was a challenge to their entire cultural understanding. He knew they were about to challenge a society that abandoned injured members as a standard practice. "We're not just sending a message," Jay explained to Captain Kim. "We're presenting evidence of a different way of existing." The transmission contained everything they had learned. Detailed medical records showed how Crayola had survived. Biological scans revealed the complexity of her species' potential. Most importantly, it demonstrated the power of compassion and individual survival. Sung Min Lee had discovered something extraordinary about Crayolla's cellular structure. Her body could now adapt and heal in ways that defied previous scientific understanding. Each medical intervention had transformed her, making her something more than her original biological design. Days passed. The ship waited for a response. The tension was palpable. Would her civilization accept this radical new information? Would they recognize the value of individual life? The response came unexpectedly. Not a direct communication, but a series of complex energy signals that suggested deep internal conflict within their society. Crayolla's people were debating, discussing, challenging their own long-held beliefs. Her offspring continued to grow, developing capabilities that fascinated the entire crew. It wasn't just a child, it was a living repository of potential, a bridge between two different forms of intelligent life. Yoonji Choi worked on advanced translation systems, breaking down the complex communication patterns. What they discovered was a society on the brink of transformation. Crayolla's survival was becoming a catalyst for change. "They're questioning everything," Yoonji reported. "Our transmission has created something like a cultural earthquake in their civilization." Jay understood the significance. This was more than a rescue mission. It was a moment of potential cultural revolution for an entire species. One act of compassion was challenging centuries of established practice. The ship's medical bay had become more than a healing space. It was now a living laboratory of interspecies understanding. Crayola moved between human technology and her own biological systems with increasing ease. Captain Kim watched the developments with a mixture of scientific excitement and philosophical wonder. They had done more than rescue an individual. They had potentially changed the trajectory of an entire civilization. Transmission after transmission arrived from Crayola's homeworld. Some were challenging, some were curious, some were filled with what could only be described as hope. The concept of individual value was being re-examined. Crayola's body continued to change. Her biological systems now incorporated elements of human medical technology, creating a hybrid form of existence that defied traditional understanding. She was becoming something new, neither fully her original species nor completely human. Her offspring demonstrated similar extraordinary capabilities. The small being could now communicate complex ideas through subtle energy pulses, bridging the gap between different forms of intelligence. As the Horizon Pathfinder prepared for the next phase of its journey, everyone understood that something profound had happened. A single act of rescue had become a potential turning point for understanding life in the universe. "We're not just explorers anymore," Jay said quietly to Captain Kim. "We're agents of change." The ship continued its journey through the vast darkness of space. But now it carried something more than scientific equipment and research data. It carried hope. It carried the potential for a new way of understanding life, compassion, and connection. The universe, it seemed, had just become a much more interesting place.